This Choircast podcast episode is brought to you by the book Letting Go, How I Failed Gay Conversion Therapy and Learned to Love Myself by Aaron Simnowitz. In this book, I take the reader on my journey as I navigate the controversial divide between the evangelical church and homosexuality. At 19 years old, my Christian faith and obedience to Jesus was the most important thing in my life. However, my attraction to other males tested my loyalties, as I believed I only had two choices, either choose Jesus and deny my sexuality, or choose my sexuality and denounce Jesus. In Letting Go, I hold no punches as I explicitly tell my story with relentless vulnerability, showcasing the emotional pain, anguish, and frustration, yet humorously engaging the readers simultaneously. This book gives readers just one example of a life that was tortured by gay conversion therapy and how it is possible to come out on the other side of self-acceptance. You can pick up this book at Amazon.com. right now.
Western Christianity has spent the last 2,000 years telling everyone they're separated from God.
This is Not Church with John and Nat Turney.
Could you one time just kick it? Kick it.
Kick it, Kyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're nuts. This is crazy. This is what we do. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. This is not church because, as we say all the time, if this was church, you'd have left by now. So we are back again. My name is Nat. I'm with my brother John. You can't see him, but he's waving furiously into the camera. Wave furiously, John. How does one wave furiously? Do you like what an angry look like?
I don't know. I felt it was more like a panic that I just did than anything else. Like,
hey,
save me!
You don't have to flip me off, John. Seriously, you don't have to. I know we made a bet earlier about which one of us uses more coarse language, but you don't have to start off with rude gestures.
I'm going sign language, so you won't know.
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
Point to John.
Point to John. That's one. He didn't even do it, but I still gave him credit. All right. But hey, we're back. We're back at it again with another guest and another awesome conversation. So let's just jump right into it and introduce you to Scott Okamoto, who is a writer, musician, and a podcaster based in Pasadena, California. He's a fourth generation Japanese American. Okamoto holds an MA in writing and has taught university level English. He's the host of the podcast Chapel Probation, which, by the way, what a title. Chapel Probation. I would think it was on like permanent chapel probation.
Well, then I gotta have you on then.
Oh man, dude, tell me when. So, but he interviews evangelical alumni of Christian colleges. I never finished Christian college, but I did attend. So I think I'm sort of halfway there as a potential guest. But hey, man, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us. What's up?
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. I've been deep diving into your podcast and feel completely kind of intimidated by the list of guests that you've had, because people listening now, if they clicked on it, they're like, who the hell is Scott Okamoto?
Well, now they'll know, though. And now they'll know.
Give them a taste.
Yeah. I mean, nobody knew who Baxter Kruger was before we interviewed him. And next time I was all huge. They were like, who's this guy? What's this book, The Shack? Who wrote that? And we were like, hey, let me tell you about this. So we can launch careers, man. That's what we do. So,
all right, launch me.
Hey, all right, man. Hey, so tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we read your bio real quick, but a lot of times we ask people to kind of give us a little background on their faith journey, if that's a good place to jump off and see where we go from there. What do you think?
Sure. I grew up evangelical. I'm kind of older. I grew up in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, baby. Us too.
I don't know. Yeah. Yay, Gen X. Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in Arcadia, California, which was at the time an all-white. It was one of the red line cities of Los Angeles. They wouldn't let Black people live there. They let my parents move in because they didn't know what Asian people were. So they kind of slipped in. And suddenly I'm at a school with like all white kids. And my parents became evangelical Christians because some nosy neighbors invited them to some Bible study fellowship thing. Nice. Which is like, it's like doing homework with the Bible for no reason.
Yeah, really.
And so we're going to church, and it's cool when you're like 7. You know, you
Sure.
drink some juice and you hear some stories about Jesus and you sing some songs. So they got me and my brother in at the ground level. We were all in. Yeah. Yay God, yay church. We were fully committed. I led worship. I learned how to play guitar just so I could do like worship songs, which is really sad. Well, that wasn't the only reason. I heard Eddie Van Halen in like 1980. It just kind of blew my mind. And so I was,
We'll see.
I was playing, worship songs, but
you
also
still have that.
Yeah, so I still play music. That has remained. But yeah, I did the whole church thing through junior high, high school. By the time I got to college, we didn't have the term deconstruction, but I was sort of deprogramming from a lot of the stuff I was raised with. I met people who were like of different religions, who were atheists, who were LGBTQ, and they weren't anything the way the church told me they were supposed to be, like with fire coming out of their eyes and trying to convert me to whatever. And throughout my 20s, I just really deconstructed everything. And by the time I started teaching English at Azusa Pacific University, I was had one foot out the door as far as faith, but I was still calling myself a Christian and I was still hanging on. And I thought if I taught, because I was teaching at community college and I was doing well there, but I figured if I was going to make a last effort to stay in the faith, what better place than a place of higher learning, a university. I always do quotes when I say university when it comes to these schools. And it ends up just finishing me off. It was just like, this isn't any better. It's actually kind of the same thing as I had been observing. So by 5 years in, they kept promoting me because there's no diversity at the time. I was like one of the only non-white professors. I'm ditching all parts of my faith, and suddenly I'm like a full-time English professor. And I realized, oh shit, I don't think I believe in this anymore. I don't even know if I believe in God. So I made a deal with myself. I was like, I'm not going to proselytize anything about losing faith. I'm just going to keep teaching English. I'm going to help these kids, take the journey that I took and be more caring, be more loving as Christians. I knew the Bible better than they did, and I knew the English language and literature. So I felt good about staying there because I never tried to talk anyone out of their faith. And I kept all my student evaluations. So if you doubt me, I have all these hundreds of pages of students telling me that they felt like their faith was improved by taking my class. So then I was in trouble for pretty much the whole 15 years I was there, which was kind of fun because when you grow up being like the good Christian kid, you're used to you're always on the right side of things. You're the good one. I was the worship leader. I was the Bible study leader. I did InterVarsity Christian Fellowship in college. I was like a leader in that. The assumption is in Christian settings that I was the good one. And suddenly I was the bad one because I was talking about like social justice and racism and not hating people because they were gay. And that doesn't fly well in these spaces. And so suddenly I had a reputation amongst students and faculty and administration that I was bad. I was dangerous. And I'm not going to lie, it was kind of fun. It was...
It can be.
So I was going to be fired in 2013 over the LGBTQ issue. They had started an underground student group, and all of the students in it, including and myself being a part of it, could have been kicked out of the school for just meeting to talk about the issue. And they found out about it and they were going to fire me. And so I quit. But I held on for a good long time. And the podcast, Chapel Probation, I started that to sort of tell the stories that weren't going to fit in my book. Otherwise, it'd have been like 1,000 pages. I didn't want to have one of those big ass books that look really intimidating. And I want a nice, easy looking book, So the podcast allowed me to contact all the people who had some horrific stories, whether it was for race or gender or sexuality, or even just theological problems with the faith, to tell their stories of what they experienced at the school and at school. And then I opened it up in the second season to talk to people from a whole bunch of different schools, because by then the word gotten out that I was doing this podcast. And I'm starting the third season at the end of this month. So
wow. Well, congrats on that, man. And you wrote a book. And the title of the book is?
Asian American Apostate. I had to look up what that. We needed another A. I like that. Apostate is someone who has renounced their faith.
Yeah. So Asian American Apostate. All right. First of all, you have a gift for titles. I'm thoroughly digging Chapel Probation.
I'm bad at it. Yeah. And then Chapel Probation was someone else gave that to me, so I was like, "Yeah, that's
nice." I do like alliteration. That's nice.
The cover of your book is really simple, but at the same time, I think it's so appropriate because it looks like a Bible.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, and it's like
a Gideon Bible.
It looks like it could be in a hotel room in that drawer you open up. There would be like the Gideon Bible, and then your book right next to it.
Yeah. If the hotels or motels want to contact me, we can make that happen.
Yeah, I was going to say that might be a really good viral marketing campaign.
I think your book would be a better read, actually.
But if you could just mark it with like Motel 6 or somebody, say, hey, buy a gross of these, stick them in, just see how it goes. The Gideons have had a lock on this for too damn long.
That's true.
So that's interesting. So as you're talking to people who have had a similar experience in these, and I know we quote the institutions of higher learning. My experience with those kinds of colleges has been, it's just weird. You know what I mean? Like it's the indoctrination game is strong. Yeah. Seems like the academic, the level of scholarship is kind of low. Is that kind of what your experience was at Azusa? And have you heard that from other people as well?
Yeah, across the board. Like at Azusa, the science department doesn't believe in science.
Clearly. Oh, Jesus. How does that work?
They're accredited, so they have to teach it.
So you don't learn about evolution.
Yeah. Well, they'll give evolution equal time to creation theology.
Sure. But do they just straw man the hell out of evolution and say, well,
they just give disclaimers.
All those guys think we just came out of nothing and turned in, came from monkeys and goo.
Yeah, plenty of that.
I was watching a guy on YouTube the other day. I can't remember what his name was, but he was a Scottish guy, had a really thick accent, and he was talking about he was critiquing the guy whose name I'm going to forget. He's that dude that does all the like the evangelism stuff with Kirk Cameron. What's his name? Doesn't matter. But he was going on and on about this guy and how he was basically just giving all these straw man arguments for what evolution, what evolution teaches, and then just setting himself up as this ultimate arbiter of what truth is. And it was just, man, he was just so pissed off, and I'm like, the whole time I'm listening going, no, Ken Ham's the other guy. It'll come to me in a second. He's a real POS, man. Cause he's the guy that corners people on the street. He is. I'm being as nice as I can do. That's not a critique. It's an observation. He's a literal piece of shit who walks up to people and accosts them in the street, asks them if they've ever told a lie. And then if they admit they've told a lie, then he calls them a liar. So you're and walks them through this process of going, well, you're a lying, adulterous, blaspheming adulterer, and you don't think you deserve hell. It's just that shtick, you know what I mean?
No.
It's just the most disingenuous bullshit you can imagine. If you're keeping score, by the way, John, that's 3 for me. And
oh yeah, you mark that down.
But
I gotta catch up. Yeah,
I need that little clicker. But but that's interesting. I mean, that's to have it. Why even bother having a science department at that point? Why? I guess because you have to for your accreditation. I mean,
for accreditation, yeah. Yeah. And, they have film professors that don't let their students watch R-rated movies, which there's a lot of good movies.
You've left off a whole bunch, man.
Yeah.
Nothing by Martin Scorsese. I mean,
isn't The Passion of Christ rated R?
That's an exception. Yeah. Cause
they can watch that one. They get a note from their parents.
That was required viewing. Yeah.
What always cracked me up was it cracked me up's the wrong. That's not. Actually, it's really, really weird. But there was always these exceptions, like within the circles I ran in with evangelicals. R-rated movies that were violent were usually excused. Yeah. So I could watch.
Okay.
You watch Braveheart, or you watch people mutilate each other. But if there was any sexual content, then but that we can't have
just
that.
Nudity.
So, yeah. Oh no, there's boobs in this one. You can't watch this one. This guy's getting his head blown off with a cannonball.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's probably okay.
Yeah, that's in the Bible.
So is all the sex stuff, man. The Bible's a highly sexually explicit book, man. That's messed up.
It is.
The Bible should be rated R.
So. It should. Well, they should ban it. According to all their rules, it should be one of the banned books.
At least it shouldn't be available to kids under 18. I mean, maybe you should not be allowed to read that until you turn 18, and then you can have, you can make some better choices. I don't know. Just a thought, John. What do you think, man?
It's a thought.
John gave up the Bible for Lent and has never picked it back up again. So
That is absolutely true. That's not even a lie.
he's
So John is the apostate, and Nat is still the believer.
The apostate.
I'm on the fence. I no longer. Yeah, I know. I don't identify as a Christian. That's a moniker I've given up entirely. I don't think it's salvageable, that word. Still love Jesus, man. I still am enamored of the whole story. I like what he represents. And I got to a point where I asked myself this sort of rhetorical question. And the rhetorical question I asked myself was, if everything in the Bible about Jesus was untrue, the divinity, the death and the burial, the resurrection, do I still find meaning and value in the words he said and the way he lived his life? And I said to myself rhetorically, yeah, I actually do. So I think it's whether or not you buy off on the metaphysical stuff, that's an issue for another discussion. But as a model for living, yeah, love your enemies. I think that's a pretty good idea. It'll probably end up getting you killed, but in the meantime, you can sleep at night. So sadly, too many people who wear the name Christian proudly don't actually follow Jesus. And so they're way more enamored with the institution than they ever were with him. They'd kick him out of their churches usually if he showed up. But.
Well, and there was a point where we were able to look at them and say, well, they're more Pauline than Christian, right? And sadly, right now, within specifically the religious right, they're not even Pauline. I don't know what I can't figure out what the hell they are anymore. I'm so disconnected.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah. I mean, they are empire building pieces of shit and then put a cross on the top of it, and in God we trust, and somehow that is all okay. And I think they just hold on to this idea that people aren't smart enough to realize what they're doing is not Christ-like in any way, shape, or form. It's not even Pauline. And I have a lot of issues with Paul.
Right.
But they have left left Christianity.
They may not know who Paul is.
Yeah.
Was he the guy that invented the AR-15? Because if he is, they like him a lot. I see him in a lot of their pictures. It's like God, the Bible, my semi-automatic weapon. That's their holy trinity, And, sadly, we had another shooting today with another probably AR-15, and they're still going, it's not the guns, it's the, So,
well, then you have the whole, Budweiser decides to partner with a transgender person who I follow on TikTok. I think they're amazing. And, God forbid they become a spokesperson for a beer, a bad beer, by the way. I think we all agree with.
I boycott Bud Light for entirely different reasons.
Yeah. I boycott it just because it's crappy beer.
Yeah, it's just put out by a huge beer conglomerate.
And then just the audacity of these people to show themselves like Kid Rock, right? Just shooting through, just blowing up. And by the way, if you haven't watched the video, watch
Kid who?
Yeah, whatever.
Kid what?
But watch the video, because he's not even good enough with his fully auto rifle. It's a fully auto rifle. He can't even use that. He needs a guy. If you watch it, you will see that there's guns shooting from beside him because he can't hit it with his fully auto rifle. He needs help. And then as he's doing that, I think he's drinking a Coors, which was pro LGBTQI. Driving his Ford truck, which is pro LGBTQIA plus.
All those big companies pander to every demographic they can. That they're
absolutely
money.
Yeah. I mean, you can't.
The only reason Budweiser's doing it is because they can make money at it. Now but it brings out the horrific side of the religious right, and the stupidity of it. Right. It's like, so now there's a transgender woman who is a spokesperson for Budweiser, so I can never touch a Budweiser ever again, ever, ever, ever. Which may not be
a bad thing for them.
It probably won't be. But
I'll say this. So I grew up thinking I was white, and my dad was kind of a redneck. So I grew up hunting and fishing. And I'll say this, if it's a hot day and you're fishing and all you have to drink is Bud Light,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In that context, I'll drink that.
When my son got married, his in-laws provided all the stuff for the reception, and they provided the alcohol. And it came down to a choice between Bud Light and Coors Light. I reluctantly went
That's
Bud Light.
That's a tough one.
I mean, they're equally shitty, but I don't
know if I'd be able to pull them apart. Yeah.
It was either that or drink water, which was actually not that far apart from drinking the Bud Light or the Coors Light. But anyway, it's just another thing for people to get outraged about. And actually, I saw that meme that Matt DeStefano put out with Travis Tritt, where he's all mad about it. I'm like, Travis, who? All these people are all these washed up has-been, really? When's the last time Travis Tritt was relevant? You like that one? English major. I just used the word relevant. You should critique me for that.
No, I tend not to. Yeah, it's fine. I knew what you were saying.
I try to enunciate my words, but sometimes I get tongue-tied, especially
English
after my second
language.
No. It is a weird language. You're not wrong about that.
Yeah. Don't get me started.
Did you grow up? So did you speak Japanese in the home?
Never. Fourth generation. My parents don't even speak.
Oh, okay.
I'm fluent in Spanish, almost.
I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close to fluent in Spanish. That's my degrees in Spanish.
Oh, hey.
But it's funny because my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law's wife is Korean, and she grew up, never spoke a word of Korean. And then the first time she went to Korea, like she was pretty heavily shamed because she goes to meet all her family.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, you don't speak the language? What the hell is wrong with you? Like her mother never taught her, just she wanted her to assimilate. That was her deal, was that, there was that generation of people that I think valued that over, I mean, they maintained their parts of their culture in other ways, but they wanted their kids to fully assimilate. And so she didn't learn a word hardly.
Well, and don't you find that to be true across the board, specifically first generation, second generation? They're telling their children that the best thing for you to do is to, become American, right? Because we're such a dominant culture that we feel the need to suppress anything that isn't American. And so, I find this even within the indigenous cultures, right? That, that we want to suppress anything that allows them to hold on to their culture. So it's not that hard or that far-fetched to see how, you say you're fourth generation, that by that point, the culture has been so assimilated into American culture that the language your parents or your grandparents or grandparents spoke or great grandparents spoke is no longer spoken in the house, right?
Right. Yeah. And so being Japanese American too has its own unique set of circumstances.
Well, yeah.
When they put them in the camps for being Japanese, a lot of folks, including my family, kind of came out of the camps feeling not ashamed to be Japanese, but definitely wary of it. And so they had to prove to their neighbors and to their culture, their communities, that they were good Americans. And so they didn't. So my parents were the generation that kind of shunned Japanese culture and language. The food was fine, kept that. But so my parents didn't really speak Japanese past like early childhood. And a lot of that was just because of the fear, they stuck us in prison in the middle of the desert just because we were Japanese before. This could happen again. So let's be the best damn Americans we can be. So yeah, that was the pressure of our family.
That's too bad because you think about how pliable kids' minds are and how easily they adapt to learning language. And most of the kids, there's a new generation of kids. And I taught Spanish in high school, and it was rare that I had any kids in my classes who were from Hispanic homes that did not speak Spanish pretty much constantly at home. But they spoke English very well. They were just fluent in either. They didn't know a thing about the grammar. They couldn't do any of the work. They were terrible students because they just assumed they knew it because they could go home and talk with grandma, and they were fluent in a way I never will be. You know what I mean? Like I still
culturally.
It's that first language. But I was happy to see that. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, that's good. I'm happy to see people maintaining that part of their culture through language. And we just had Terry Wildman on, who was the lead translator for the First Nations translation of the New Testament, and he was talking about that. You know, that loss of language in the indigenous culture has been pretty catastrophic, because now it's not like there's volumes and volumes and volumes of writings in Navajo or Cherokee or these other, other languages. So if it's not maintained through the spoken word, some of these languages are bordering on being lost forever.
Right.
And it's tragic. So, yeah.
It is.
And then we got, Azusa Pacific out there doing their damnedest to see if that they can't just help that along. So, but I'm just kidding. I just figured we'd get on Azusa Pacific at least once or twice. Just
just bring it back. Just bring it back to that. So.
We want to stay on message here. And on message is crapping on bad Christian colleges. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, or maybe not. Maybe that's exactly what we're. I was telling you. So I actually went to a couple of different. So I don't remember. I don't know if you're familiar with who Joyce Meyer is. You probably know who she's.
She wrote books, right?
She wrote books. She was a big. Might still be, I don't know, big sort of evangelical public speaker.
Every time I see her, she looks like the Joker from Batman.
Well, because she keeps having more and more plastic surgery. I won't shame her for her choices there.
Sure. No, let's just.
I will. She could. I'll shame her for. There's plenty of other stuff to shame her over, but she went to a Bible college called Life Christian University, and then Life Christian University branched out all over the country in churches. Like you could have your own little branch of that inside your church. And so when I was an associate pastor at this one little church, we had courses through Life Christian University. That's what everybody was. So the guy who was my senior pastor was a PhD, had gotten his PhD through this university. Holy mackerel. Oh my God. Yeah. You want to talk about
he was quite a scholar, I take it.
If by scholar you mean complete idiot, then yeah, absolutely. How do you get a PhD in any kind of like theology and not having taken any language classes? I mean, you can't even get an MDiv without at least taking like first year Greek and Hebrew, right? I mean, it was like a diploma mill, really. And I sat through 2 years of these classes before I'm like, this is just dumb. Like the academic level here is just, it's almost non-existent.
Well, the King James was written in English, so.
So why bother with the Greek and the Hebrew?
Language of the Bible, yeah.
I was pretty sure that Jesus penned that with King James, like they sat side by side, and kind of a ghost, like in the movie Ghost when they made pottery. That's how I envision King James and Jesus.
Yeah,
straight out of Jesus' mouth, and he's just scribbling. So they went down like that, right?
Everly Brothers blasting in the background.
Yeah, and some sort of weird suggestive. All right, we're probably tiptoeing towards the edge here.
Texas.
I think so. The Everly Brothers, I think so, yeah. All the good musicians were from Texas, man. Think about Roy Orbison was from Texas. Buddy Holly's from Texas.
My guitar back here is a Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of guitar. So.
Is that a Strat?
Is that a Stevie Ray Vaughan?
It's not a Stevie Ray Vaughan model because there's no way I would show up to a gig with SRV on my guitar. That's just asking for But it's a 62 reissue Sunburst Strat made in Japan that Stevie liked.
Love it, man.
One of the first concerts I ever went to was thanks to Nat. He bought us tickets for my birthday. We went and saw Stevie Ray Vaughan on my birthday in 1989.
Ooh, right before he died.
Yeah.
He died 2 years later.
2 years, right?
But he was clean and sober in '89, right? Because he was.
Yeah, he was.
He was supposed to have an opening band, and he didn't. And so he played for 3 hours.
Yeah.
3.5.
Here's the funny part. I had no idea who this guy was, but my brother's like, we got to show up like super early to the show because it's going to be packed. And we show up to the local venue in Eureka, California, and there's nobody there. I'm like, are you sure this guy's any good? He's like, no, trust me. He's really good. He's really good. And so they opened the doors. There's maybe like 30 of us. So we got right up onto the stage.
Oh.
And then I was like, taken to school on what Texas blues guitar meant.
That had to be magic. Because even people who don't know blues guitar see videos of him, and they're just like, wow, there's something. It must be the devil. It must
he
be.
sweat on my face. That's all I remember.
Oh,
that was the record. He put out the record In Step, which was the first album he made after he got clean and sober. And then his concerts became about halfway through. And I heard this in multiple different other like bootleg recordings. He would give the same speech about like, hey, if you're doing this stuff, like it's going to kill you. Like, stop it.
Yeah, it's in, what's the song he does that in? He does it in the song,
Life by the Drop.
Life by the Drop. Or the other one he does is Tightrope.
It's about it.
Tightrope.
There's a song he has that he wrote about a friend. I'm going to have to look it up.
Lenny?
But yeah, Life by the Drop is definitely a good one.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Anyway.
It was amazing. And then, then he introduced, for me personally, he introduced me then to people like B.B. King, Albert King, Buddy Guy, Muddy Waters. And then I went out down that rabbit hole of all the old blues guys. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Stevie and how gracious he was to the old
very
blues
much
guys,
paid homage to. And so just to tie it back to what we were talking about, listening to people like Stevie Ray Vaughan was a huge part of my deconstruction because my parents didn't restrict me from listening to any music as long as I could show them that I was learning it on the guitar or, had some kind of artistic merit to it. And so seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan, I never got to see him live, but seeing that and hearing that was like, man, like if truth and beauty are the same thing and all truth is God breathed, then goddamn, that God exists in those fingers playing and coming out of those amps. And it just changed my perspective of a lot of things, not just music. There's a bunch of bands and singers that fulfilled that role. But Stevie Ray Vaughan was definitely one of those, like, I thought I knew guitar. I listened to Queen, I listened to Van Halen, Rush. Those are my big geek, the Police for the more, poppy rock stuff.
Man, yeah. I love Rush though. Rush is probably top 5 favorite band for me of all time.
Oh, me too. I saw them like 10 times throughout my life. But then when I heard Stevie, it was like this go back to basics of this American music. Definitely was just like like a whole new set of synapses started connecting in my head, and I know for sure that those synapses that connected were part of my deconstruction because I wasn't listening to the bullshit coming from certain pastors or people like Joyce Meyer that we brought up. Or it's like the more truth that you see in art, in language, in literature, I think it just equips you to better understand what and interpret what you're seeing and in hearing. So yeah, shout out to Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah,
we've talked about this before. It's like we've talked about like the whole like idea of inerrancy of the Bible, right? And that it's God inspired. And I think I'm not even sure I can go that far, but I'll go as far as to say the Bible is inspired by some kind of divinity. But then again, so is Life by the Drop. So is a Bruce Cockburn song. So is, Bob Dylan, Rush. There are moments where I find myself I'm driving in my car and there's that song, right, that comes over that's just like so connected to your spirit or your soul that it takes you to another place. And so that's what I think a lot of the evangelical, ultra right people miss is like God can inspire people even outside of what they consider their faith. And if they're not willing to listen to those people who have been inspired by the divine, then they are missing so much, right?
Totally. I took it out of my book, but each chapter in my book, there's like a flashback. And there were way more flashbacks than I had chapters, so I couldn't use it. But one of the flashbacks I had was, I think it was the first time I saw Rush play back in like 84. They launched, the lights go down, they launch into Spirit of Radio. And, back then, kids these days, they can't appreciate, like, we had no access to these bands. So just seeing them come out onto the stage and being in the same room with them and hearing them play my favorite song to start the show, I wasn't crying, like bawling, but I got teary. And it disturbed me because I never cried during worship. I was a worship leader. I loved worship in church. I loved singing the songs, but I never had that emotional moment that I had in that Rush concert. And it was like a weird theological dilemma for me that I had this moment where, I'm 13. I'm trying to be all cool with my friends, but like I got tears in my eyes.
But they're playing Spirit of Radio. Yeah. And you're there watching it. I would cry. Yeah. Right now I would cry. I literally just had this experience. Went and saw the Killers, another one of my favorite bands. And like they hit the stage and they just launch into one of my favorite songs, and I'm having this emotional reaction to this. And then for the next 2 hours, I'm just transported. By the way, if you've ever seen Killers live, phenomenal. I had the same experience at a U2 concert, which me too. I still think U2 is one of my most. I think they're one of the most spiritual.
The Elevation Tour. I cried.
Yeah, they did. They just did. This was like 2 or 3 years ago when they did the anniversary tour for Joshua Tree, and that still is one of those albums that I can listen to front to back. I know every single song. I know the order of all. You know what I mean? I've listened to it so much to get to watch them play it through front to back. Whew, man,
Police, Rush, all these. Are we becoming musical best friends like right now?
I think we are.
These are all like dear to my heart.
I love Rush very, very much. I was heartbroken when Neil Peart died. I don't. That's probably the biggest reaction I've had to a musician dying post Stevie Ray, and I was crushed by Stevie Ray's passing. And then when Neil died,
I think in the middle of that, for me, it was Tom Petty. When Tom Petty died,
I was going to say Tom Petty.
Tom Petty.
That was just so unexpected.
Yeah.
Well, and just recently, someone's like, "Did you have any clue that he was even on heroin?" I was like, "No."
He was very, very sick.
Look at the way he played.
He had been very sick for about a decade. He had a lot of chronic pain issues. Because he was the machine, he toured and he toured and he toured anyway. Yeah. And kind of just tried to like bully through it. But yeah, Tom Petty. What bummed me out, and this is going to sound very selfish, but Tom Petty died the day of the Las Vegas shooting. And the news of his passing got buried by a maniac in Las Vegas shooting into a crowd. Remember that whole deal shooting that happened the same day that Tom Petty died. And so,
that happened to somebody else. Somebody died the same day as JFK's assassination. I'll have to look it up. There's another artist who died. Oh, C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis died the same day as JFK.
So it's probably 2 months later. People are like, wait a minute, what happened? Well, we were kind of busy with the president being assassinated, but yeah, I think musical best friends. I have that same strap, by the way. So I'm also a guitar player. So I think we're bonding on multiple levels here, man.
Well, and for me, like, we could talk about those musical moments, right? The people who meant the most to us, and then we were devastated when we lost them, right? So Chris Cornell was another one. Yeah, another big one. I'm not even afraid to admit it. I just cried. I cried the day that Chris Cornell died. Because I had just been reintroduced to his music and his stuff outside of Soundgarden and Audio Slave and some of the stuff he was doing. And I felt like I honestly believe he was just hitting his peak on his ability to be a solo artist.
Right.
And then, depression or whatever took him to that dark place. Sadly, we've lost too many musicians to suicide. And,
well, there's something about being able to tap into those emotions. Somebody like that, I was thinking of a band like, no one's probably ever heard of a band called Frightened Rabbit, which is
I love them.
An amazing, they were an amazing Scottish band, very, very, very good. But their lead singer he wrote beautiful songs, and he passed away to suicide. There's something about being able to tap into those emotions and have them be so close to the surface that you can just do what they do and be susceptible to that level of depression.
Well, and I think we can connect this to spirituality, right? I think we can connect this to people who were so connected to the divine that religion no longer mattered, right? And I think we see that in people like Henry Nouwen, who didn't kill himself, but obviously found another level of connection to the divine that then he was like for the rest of his life trying to connect. Or like the podcast you were just talking about with Eugene Exman. He has this moment on a horse where he sees or feels the presence of God and then spends the rest of his life trying to connect with that again. Right? So these are, but the Western evangelical fundamentalist church wants to squash all that down into a moment that they can create within their church. And if it's not inside their church, it doesn't really matter. It's not real.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right.
And I think that's some of the stuff that you're talking about as you are slowly stepping away and becoming the quote unquote apostate, right?
There's no quotes there. He's just an apostate. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth or not. Is that a bit tongue in cheek, or have you just walked away? Are you just done with it?
I've walked away, and I'm not going to church.
Yeah,
no, it's fine.
Sure.
It's what the book's about. It's like I'm done with church. I'm done with Christianity, like you. But
yeah, amen.
Sort of, but past that, I don't. I'm agnostic in the sense where I'm okay not knowing and not being certain. Because you spend your whole life coming up in evangelical Christianity, being trained to be certain, to be absolutely confident in whatever the hell you believe, and even if it shifts, like, oh, hey, well, because I was, when I was a kid, God hated gay people. Gay people were evil. God told me this. And then I go to college and I meet gay people. I'm like, no, gay people are just people. Like, oh, and then so, yeah, God, that's what God meant to say. God loves gay people. It's like, so as I'm evolving as a human being, God just happens to be evolving with me until the point where it's just like, is this me I'm praying to and projecting into the heavens as God? And so, yeah. And so, but there's enough mystery in this world and in this universe where I'm fine saying, yeah, who knows what's out there? Higher power, not higher power, science.
I recently, in the last couple of days, I had a conversation with a pastor that I used to go to his church. I used to play in his worship band, and he knows where I am. He knows that I've left the church. He knows, and for the last couple of years, it's been very awkward whenever we see each other, right? And I decided this last time to just have a conversation with him and just be okay with that we're friends, but we don't agree anymore. And one of the things I told him was like, I feel like I am closer to God now than I ever was, if there is a God. And, that's the part that, most Christians don't want to say. It's like, there are days where I still don't believe that there's a God. You don't have to look very far into the American landscape to believe that there is no God. Because God would, if the God was all powerful and omnipotent, he wouldn't let all this shit happen. And so there are days where I'm like, yeah, there's no God. But in losing my faith, I've found a better connection to the divine.
Yeah.
If they exist.
Or heaven.
And on the good days, it's really good, right? And on the bad days, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And but the point is, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think
that's the place we get to, right? Where.
Right.
No, I think so. I mean, I'm getting to the point where I feel like agnosticism is a more sincerely held belief than certainty. Like I think you can be a person of faith and still be agnostic, because to me that just means I'm willing to admit there's things I don't know and there's things I don't understand. I remember reading Pete Enns' book, The Sin of Certainty, and just the whole way through going, yeah, okay, yeah, that's it. Okay, yeah, you're explaining what I'm going through, because he was hitting it on the head for me. But you're right, because you're exactly right. We were all raised to not only be confident and certain, but then be ready to defend that faith to the T, right? And we were supposed, that was part of the whole evangelical training, was not to, we weren't educated. We were indoctrinated so that we could provide the right, scripted answers when we were challenged in the world. And so sadly, it didn't take, it only takes a good, handful of really hard questions and you're stumped. Like, you're off the script. I don't know where to go from here.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if they don't accept your little trite saying or your scripture verse, then, I got nothing else.
Yeah. So, I'm looking at my paper, my little flow chart. If he says this, you go here. If he says, I don't, okay, I'm out of responses.
Yeah.
So
we went off the chart.
Now what do I do? So, but that's why I am drawn to people who sort of work in the theological space, but who approach it from a more, just a more mysterious approach, like they're willing to embrace that wonder and say, well, listen, there's things about this I don't get. These are the things I think I do know. So think about like a guy like Thomas Ord or, Mark Karras, who write from like an open relational theology standpoint. Yeah. And and for them, that solves some issues because God is not omnipotent in the way that we've been taught. God does not, necessarily single-handedly reach into the world and intervene and do things. If we would only just pray the right way. So that opens, that does, it lends itself to sometimes more questions than answers, but I'm getting to a place, maybe you are too, where those questions, I'd rather have those questions than the little trite, pat answers that don't really satisfy.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah. We just solved all the world's problems.
We solved the whole thing. Man, I love it when we can just solve problems, man.
Crack open a Bud Light and...
I'm actually just sitting here now trying to figure out what guitars you have in the room with you besides that Strat. I see other instruments and sorry, I'm a musician, so...
I have a Sir, and I just packed... I'm going to rehearsal right after this. I've been playing my Gretsch, mostly semi-hollow body.
Ooh, I love my Gretsch.
You have a Gretsch too?
Yeah, I've got a little single cutaway gold top Gretsch that I love.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, we have the same guitars. We have the same interest in music. Wait, John,
I'm the bass player, so I don't have.
I have a Geddy Lee bass.
How many bass players do you meet that have like 25 basses though? I mean, I know they exist.
I have one, and my wife has one.
But most bass players I know have one or two solid basses, and they're happy. And I've got like 18 guitars, and I'm like, well, but I have
like 5.
But I don't have a Gibson Flying V. I mean, why don't I have that yet? Why don't I have a...
yeah. Well, as we get older, those are really hard to play sitting down.
They really, really are, man. But I would still love to have I want the Randy Rhoads style polka dot, Gibson Flying V. Oh my, man, it's a badass guitar. I'd love that thing so much.
You don't even need a bridge pick. You don't even need a neck pickup. You just need the bridge pickup.
Just exactly right. Like you're toggling between those anyway. Come on.
The weird thing about my bass collection is 2 of the main basses I still play were bought for me by Nat. Nat bought me my PV Foundation bass, which is now 40 years old, and my Ovation Roundback acoustic.
And then the stand-up bass you stole.
I have an Ovation too.
Yeah, a buddy of mine just gave. I have 2 Ovations that a friend of mine gave me a couple years ago. They're really nice American-made ones, and they're match set 6-string and 12-string. And they're like an emerald green top. They're really, really nice. I never play them.
Yeah.
But they're in the cases and
those are also hard to play sitting down because they keep sliding.
They keep sliding. And especially if you're like me now that I'm in my 50s and I've got this, let's just call it a beer belly. But, it's like I'm already pushing out and then I'm pushing out this round back guitar. It's like,
it just flops down.
I had an uncle who was a guitar player. I have an uncle. He's still around. But the same uncle that gave me my first Stevie Ray Vaughan cassette back in the early 80s. And, but also he played an Ovation. Remember that, John? Uncle Jim had an Ovation that I just thought that was the coolest thing because it was just unlike any guitar I'd ever seen. And then we're sitting by his car one day and he hands me this cassette and he's like, go home and listen to this and see if it doesn't like change your life.
Yeah.
And it was Texas
one
Flood.
of the earlier albums?
It was Texas Flood.
Yeah.
And it just blew my freaking brain out the backside of my head. And I was like, what is this? This is amazing.
Well, I mean, since we're going down memory lane of music, I mean...
Might as well.
So there's...
Yeah, we're here.
But this is really cool. And I would ask you, Scott, if this is the same for you. Did you have someone who was kind of like your mentor who introduced you to music that was outside of what you would normally listen to? So for Nat and me, we ended up in a band temporarily. I don't think it ever did anything, but we ended up in a band with a guy who was Indian, from India. I don't even remember his name.
John.
And so he introduces me to like Hendrix and Prince. I had never heard of Prince prior to him like introducing us to Prince. And then we end up into this like band with this older guy who teaches us like old school blues. And we end up making a band called
teenagers, and he was like 35.
And we were in a band called the Red, White, and Blues Band, which was like, and we played. Our claim to fame is we played a New Year's Eve safe and sober show, mostly for churches, by the way.
Yeah, that's true.
At our high school.
I played a lot of church gigs. Yeah.
No, that was the one we played at the church that they never invited us back to because we were bad.
No, that was the year later. That was when we had gone on our own, and we started a band called Midnight Blue.
Oh, that's right.
Still with the blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, because we were gonna storm the world with Christian blues. like blues wasn't a niche market.
Really caught on.
No, I mean it was
Christian rap, metal.
Blues is a niche enough market to try it. But so
it doesn't need the word Christian in front of it.
But
maybe now's the time. Maybe. Well, yeah, I'll get to that. But I think we should form a blues band and be like Cartman in South Park and just start a Christian blues band, and like get that Myrrh money. And
I'm down.
In the age of Zoom, we could just meet like this and play over Zoom and record. It'd be
well. So on my podcast, I've recorded a couple of songs with some of my guests where I just send them tracks and then they record and then I mix it. So I might be sending you all something. So
okay,
I'm 1,000% down.
Okay, so influences. No one in my family. The church was pushing Amy Grant, so there wasn't much there. I just had friends from like other families who, like I remember when my friend got the first Sony Walkman, those little orange headphones.
Yeah, I remember.
And he put it on my head and he pushed play and Eruption came on, and it was just that was a seminal moment in my life. I was just like, what the fuck is that? Like,
yes,
that's guitar. I'm at home with my acoustic, strumming, 3 chords to play worship songs, and I hear that, and it was just like, I have to have that. I need to be that. So it was mostly friends. And like another childhood friend, my old buddy Eric, his sister had a Rush record and he put it on. We're like 11. And I heard like, I think it was Subdivisions or maybe it was Moving Pictures First was the first record I heard. And yeah, just the musicality, because I was a band geek, I played in orchestra, I was clarinet. And hearing that level of musicality and B-rock, with Neil Peart's drums and all the, Geddy Lee's bass and Alex Lifeson's guitar, all kind of intermingling in ways that I'd never heard, because I liked AC/DC and I liked all this, classic rock, but that was just like next level.
Oh yeah.
So usually it was just friends and family friends who would just turn me on to something. Because my parents are huge disappointments as far as boomers go, because they were in their 20s in the 60s, right? And they missed out on Zeppelin. They missed out on Hendrix. They mostly missed the Beatles. They knew the Beatles. Because they were trying to be their conservative, be a good American, and so they missed. They were alive when all that shit was happening, and it was completely off their radar. And to this day, I've never forgiven them for that. Like, how were you alive when the first Zeppelin album dropped and you didn't even listen to it? Like,
yeah, exactly.
When Hendrix drops, it's just like, what? You didn't even listen?
That's similar though. I mean, my dad's a boomer. Well, I guess he's not technically a boomer. He was in his 20s though. He was born in the 40s, so he's in his 20s and the 60s.
It's on the edge.
And
another common thing we have.
Huge Beatles fan. Right.
Oh, okay.
So John and I grew up
to a point.
Up to Sgt. Pepper, and then he was like, then they got weird.
Yeah.
And I'm the opposite. I'm like, at Sgt. Pepper, they got good.
I know that's
then it was. Then it was Abbey Road. Yeah, there was Revolver, and there was all these other albums that came out afterwards. I'm like, oh man, I like the early stuff, but man, the musicality and the creativity level just got crazy.
Yeah, it just
but he had a sister I keep saying had, like all these people in the past tense. My Aunt Judy's, only like 15 or 16 years older than me. And she was into Kiss and Zeppelin and Deep Purple. And so we would go to her house and peruse her record collection because we weren't allowed to have those records at home. But they were spinning at Aunt Judy's house constantly. And we may have pilfered a handful of them.
Kiss Alive 2 was like phenomenal with Beth.
The Peter Criss solo album. I found that at her, and she had Cheap Trick. I can still remember. Here's the thing about our generation is I can picture all the album covers. You know what I mean? Like that Cheap Trick album.
So right there, all that right there. That's all my records.
Nice.
So I have the Gene Simmons solo album and the Ace Frehley solo album in my collection. I need to get the Peter Criss, yes.
But yeah, but that's funny because John and I were both band geeks too, by the way. So orchestra, I should say, not band, orchestra.
Yeah.
I played
we were both in orchestra. I played stand up double bass.
No, we're the same person. We're gonna rip a hole in the time space continuum if we keep going.
Well, and then we went to school. You've heard of the band Faith No More, right?
Yeah.
So we went to school with Kevin Patton,
Mike Patton.
Kevin Patton's the older brother. Mike Patton, who was the lead singer of Faith No More. But prior to that, he was in the band Mr. Bungle, who was a band that we all hung out with, who just recently started touring again.
Wow.
So I'm actually hoping to see them in May at the Fox Theater in Oakland.
Are they touring? Like they're not doing like Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny still, are they? Are they doing something different?
No, they're just touring. They're
how fun is this though? So when we were in high school, these guys put out a death metal record, right? They Mr. Bungle goes on to become a very funky, very, very hard to pin down musically, like a cross between the Chili Peppers, like the Chili Peppers on crack. You know what I mean? Like funky.
Yeah. That was like an early 90s.
Psychedelic. It was
like metal and funk was like a thing.
Yeah.
That Faith No More kind of did.
But at one point they were doing like, Anthrax type metal, you know what I mean? And so they put out this one demo, and in our high school, they would make these cassettes and they would like distribute them through the school, and you could buy them at the local record store, and they played all the high school parties and stuff. About 30 years later, I guess it was, they decided to re-record this record, and it got Scott Ian from Anthrax got wind of it and like reached out to the band and said, dude, I love that I want to be on that. So Dave Lombardo from Slayer played drums. So on this record, they get Dave Lombardo from Slayer, they get Scott Ian from Anthrax, and the original members of Faith No More, of Mr. Bungle to re-record this record and then tour it in like 3 or 4. They did like 3 or 4 shows with it. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. Dave Lombardo is just stupid good. But anyway, there you go. There's a little trivia for you. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, except we're just shooting the crap about music, man. I love it.
So you were in orchestra playing clarinet, not band?
Yeah, I was in symphonic band and orchestra and marching band. I hated marching. I was like, I'm not joining the military because I hate this shitty marching around. But I did marching band because it was, to be in the band. But yeah. I was musician of the year in my high school. So as a clarinet player.
Amazing.
Yeah, I never got that. I enjoyed my time in orchestra. That was fun. Playing bass in orchestra, playing Nat playing violin. That was fun. I mean, I have a lot of fond memories of that.
I was the best violin player in my high school until that one girl showed up who started playing when she was like 4.
Oh shit!
Yeah, there's a Japanese method called the Suzuki method.
Method, yeah.
Yeah, and so she was, and she was Asian. I'm not sure if she was Japanese, but she was an Asian American young lady, and she had started playing, I think, violin from the time she could pick an instrument up. And she showed up as a freshman, and I think I was a junior in high school, and I was just sitting into my first violin spot because that's where I had lived. And she kicked my ass 10 ways from Sunday, and then I hated her. She was my enemy. I was sloppy compared to this girl, man. She was just precise and amazing. Yeah. Anyway, so now there goes my deep-seated animosity towards Asian American
I think I've learned
players.
a lot about you today, Matt.
Yeah, probably more than you wanted to, or than I wanted to reveal. But here we go.
No, I like learning about everything. So.
Hey, Maya, if you're listening, I still hold a grudge. Okay, that's her. Her name was Maya.
Did she go on to be a musician?
I don't know. Probably. I think she certainly went on to play in college. John and I were really fortunate. We actually were playing in junior high. We were playing in a community college chamber orchestra. We were actually pretty good. You know, I'm not, and that's not a brag. We just were. Yeah. I mean, we were playing with people 2-3 times our age and keeping up. I loved the classical music, and I loved the foundation it gave me for other stuff. You know, right? it gave me, and I still love classical music. But it was. We actually went to school with a few people who went on to become professional orchestra. There was Susan Hyken went on to play. Remember, she played it in different symphonies, and so there were a handful of people from our school that went on to be, you know, and then other people that went on to become famous musicians of their own in their own rights. But yeah, we were very fortunate. We were still in school when, you know, music programs were funded very, very well. And so our high school, we've talked about this a couple times. John's and my high school was a lot like a performing arts school. There was 4 or 5 different bands and, you know, like an orchestra and probably 5 or 6 choirs and theater. And there was all kinds, and there was just, if you wanted to be involved, you could be as involved as you wanted to be.
Yeah, in a weird way, it was like, you know, it was like the band geeks and the orchestra geeks and the theater geeks were actually the cool guys for a very, very, very small period of time. Where, like, if you were involved in any of this, you were actually as cool as the football quarterback.
Yeah.
And
our football team sucked, so we were cooler than the football team.
Ours kind of did too. This was California.
Sadly,
it wasn't Texas.
And sadly, it's moved from that.
Wait,
right?
Where in California was this?
So we were in a little town called Eureka.
Oh yeah, okay, up
so
north.
way up north. Yeah. So there's like I said, it was a neat. It was a neat vibe, you know, for a little while. And sadly, my sister, by the time she was 10 years, she's about 10 years behind John and I. By the time she got to high school, a lot of those programs had been cut. Then they still had them, but they didn't have them in nearly the same quantity. But I actually learned how to sing, you know, because I got pulled into a vocal jazz group. And so I'm like, that was phenomenal. Learning how to sing like really intricate vocal jazz with, you know, 6 and 7 part harmonies, and like, it taught me a lot.
All right, we got to do a track together. I'm down.
Well, and I'm gonna bring it full circle. Full circle. And it's because of these arts programs that then introduced me to theater, which then introduced me to the LGBTQIA+ community, that started my deconstruction.
Yeah.
Right? Because up until I was like 16, 17 years old, I was always told that the gay community was evil, that they were not, and these are big air quotes, not normal. And then I started hanging out with a very large group of LGBTQIA+ people and realized that they were the same as me. So my deconstruction started back in like 1987, 1988, somewhere in there. Before there was a word called deconstruction, right? We were just falling down that slippery slope. We were losing our faith. We were doing whatever you want to call it. But I was just connecting with people who I could relate to as human beings. And I didn't care what faith they followed anymore. And so for me, my deconstruction started back in like 1988, 1989.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why these people were being so ostracized. They had the same interests as I did. They had the same fears I did. They had the same love interests that I did. They just wanted to be heard. And so,
as we all do, yeah.
Through all of that, that was an easy step for me to say, the church doesn't get this right. I guess I don't want to deal with you anymore. I'll step outside into this other world, and we will figure it out on our own.
Yeah, totally. Well, it turns out we found out what the gay agenda really was. which was to live their lives and be left the hell alone and be allowed to pursue the things they want to pursue. Go figure.
Yeah. So evil.
I like, but that sounds like what you said. Sort of your experience was you met these people that had been demonized and found out that they weren't anything like you'd been led to believe. I wrote on a Facebook post not too long ago, but essentially said that relationships are probably the best way to get past bigotry. Because it's just difficult to demonize a human being rather than a caricature, or so once you actually you actually form a friendship or a relationship that's not based on any other agenda than you just like somebody, all of a sudden there's something doesn't make sense anymore. And so that was the death knell for me, was same like with John. Mine just happened to take another 25 years. I stayed staunchly inside the evangelicalism for too long, and it took me a little while to get out of my own way. But
those donuts can be really, really enticing,
the ones we give out of church every Sunday with the coffee and the.
They know what they're doing.
They do. I think they fill them with some kind of drug that makes you forget.
Yeah, crack donuts.
Crack donuts. Okay, now I want to crack donuts. So let's write a book called Crack Donuts.
Crack donuts.
Crack donuts.
Beware the crack donut. That's our song. We write a song. Beware the crack donut.
Write down the title, Crack Donuts. I want to go back to one thing you said, because I know we're getting close to winding this up. You got rehearsal to go to, and it's late here in Texas. But I liked the distinction, I think, and I'm not sure you did it on purpose, but you used the word deprogram in relationship to deconstruction. And I've literally been thinking about that for the last hour, going, that might be a better way to put it. I understand deconstruction. I wrote a book about deconstruction. I get it. But part and parcel of that deconstruction is a deprogramming, isn't it? I mean, it's trying to get that indoctrination stuff, all of its little tentacles that it wove in and around you, kind of try to pull those things apart. Man, that might be a very, very helpful way to think about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, all these words, there's a lot of overlap, I assume. Because deconstruction is a good word too. It's just the word of the day right now. Everyone's tired of it. But yeah, deprogramming, decolonizing, these are all just unlearning the systems and assumptions that we had held so tightly to. That so even if you lose your faith, you can still come out of like church and Christianity with some pretty shitty assumptions about the world, because it's so ingrained. True. I write in my book, at one point I led a worship thing at university, and this vineyard pastor pulled me aside afterward, and he told me that I had the gift of worship, and he knew this because he saw an angel of worship sitting on my head.
Oh,
and well, there you go.
But I write in the book, like whenever I tell that story, everyone, including myself, pictures a white angel. And like, that's the decolonizing or deprogramming. Like, if we're all God's people, then shouldn't that angel be any, but it's just like the de facto, like the default setting of our minds of what an angel and what Jesus looks like and what God looks like tends to be a white person.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure if there are angels, there are white angels. But I'm sure there's Indian angels and black angels and Asian angels, if we want to go down that road. But yeah, and so like deprogramming yourself from the centering of whiteness in America, deprogramming yourself from the fear and loathing of anyone that's different from you is a long process. So, you said it took you a long time to get out. I think it takes us all a long time. If you grew up in it, and it's
for sure
deep inside there, it's a long process of sort of extricating all that baggage that we bring with us, even when we leave, even when we say we're done with it. Everything we do today is in contrast, right, to what we used to do.
Right.
We just had Easter, and every Easter, I'm just thrilled I don't have to go to church. Those Easter services are always longer.
Oh my gosh!
They make
they're
bigger
so
pitch for money than they usually do, and
right, they do a hardcore sell on the whole. Well, they know I was on church. I was in church for I worked in church. I was on staff at churches, and man, that was our Super Bowl, man. Because you knew on that day you were going to see people you probably weren't going to see again for the next year.
Yeah.
You better make your whole elevator pitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, it better all come out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's and those of us who went to church, it was tiring because it's just like it's an extra half hour or 40 minutes. And so every Easter I'm like thrilled. I just sleep in and we have some coffee and make some waffles. And
I'll go back to church on Easter Sunday when someone posts in front of their church that they are going to have a zombie Jesus Sunday.
Like a Walking Dead Jesus.
Yeah, and I will be there. I'll be the first one in the room. I'll go for that. But outside of that, I'm like
psychedelics.
There we go. If we're gonna serve communion, could we at least do like Flamin' Hot Cheetos and Red Bull or something? I mean, but
this is what might have kept us in church. These
it might have. Give me some Takis and some Code Red Mountain Dew. Yeah, something. I mean, but yesterday was the first Easter in probably 30 years that I did not go to church. And you know what?
How was that?
It was amazing. I slept in.
Well,
I made my wife coffee, and we made breakfast, and we hung out. We watched a Harry Potter movie. It was great, man. We had a good day.
Welcome. You're one of us now.
Yeah.
You've seen the light.
I'm like, I don't think I'm going back. I haven't.
I'll check in on you on Christmas to see.
No, I was really fine. I still have friends who are in church. I still have friends who pastor churches. I still have, and none of them invited me to church, which is fine. But I thought about it for about a half a second. I'm like, oof. It held no interest for me, Never mind the fact that I'm now the certified outcast, apostate, whatever. From most of those churches think I've just gone off the deep end, and and maybe I have, but I don't need
fun
that.
in the deep end. So yeah.
That's nobody exactly, man. The shallow end's where the kiddies play.
Awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can't dive from the high dive into the shallow end. You got to go play
Hendrix in the deep end.
That's right. But can you hear Hendrix? I know you can. You can hear him, but can you hear him? Wasn't that a line from White Man Can't Jump? It's like, you can't hear Hendrix. You can't hear Hendrix. Go check it out. Check out if I'm out too. Anyway, I can hear Hendrix. By the way, Hendrix was a god amongst men. Man,
I hear Hendrix. I see the Hendrix in you both. I recognize. It used to be the Holy Spirit. Now it's
the Billy Gibbons in me recognizes the Jimi Hendrix in you. I'm actually going to go see ZZ Top in a couple of weeks, John. So ZZ Top's going to be in
without Dusty though, right?
I'm going to get on. I'm getting on stage. No. Well, they hired their longtime guitar tech.
Why do you think I grew this? I tried to replace the bass player.
That'd be a good gig because he's just playing like eighth notes on all the songs.
I mean, it's not a hard gig. Anybody can play bass for ZZ Top. Even John. It's not
sway
tough.
Back and forth a little bit.
Yeah. The guy, they said when they hired. So I read a little article about that, and I saw a picture of him. He's got this huge beard now, and he's like, he grew that like over the summer. Like this guy who'd been their guitar tech for a long, long time shows up to play, and like, who's this guy? Oh my God, that's whatever his name is. Where'd that beard come from? He's like, hey, he started growing it like 6 months ago. I'm like,
miracle growth.
That's impressive. So, I mean, no disrespect to Dusty, but at least Billy's still around. So if you're going to see ZZ Top, now's the time because he won't live forever. And Frank, he's still there. And
Frank beard without the beard.
Frank. He's just back there behind the kit going. Anyway, all right. Hey, we should let you go, but hey, we want to make sure and mention one more time the book, Asian American Apostate, which is available where books are sold.
On April 18th, so whenever this airs, maybe
on April 18th. I saw there was an Audible version that could be
I recorded it and I have some original music in there too. So
what? Nice. Okay, now I'm getting the Audible. That's absolutely happening.
Yeah, I'll get the Audible.
So
definitely get the Audible.
Make sure you get that.
It's available now.
Check out the podcast.
Chapel Probation. I'm going to have you guys on now, so
I'll be looking to book some. I'll be looking to book some stuff to promote the book. So I would definitely love to come on and talk about it and just talk about music and whatever. So that'd be great, man. All right, we'll shoot you an email.
It's been awesome talking to y'all.
Thank you for coming on, man. I really, really enjoyed that. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to
for sure.
I can't wait to check it all out. So thank you for coming, everybody else out there in Podcastville. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you. Make sure and give when the plate passes by in the aisle. Make sure and put something in the offering plate so you can sow into the ministry. Exactly.
Sow into the ministry.
Sowing into the ministry. I don't want to deprive you of a blessing, John. Everyone should have a chance.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to This Is Not Church. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on your platform of choice. If you would like to partner with us, visit patreon.com/thisisnotchurch, where you will receive exclusive content such as early access to episodes, videos of upcoming episodes, and live Q&A sessions. Be sure to check out our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode.